Not with the messenger.
Can you hear me?
Some technical problems behind the scene. Yeah, I hear you, Rashid. I'm talking. I'm doing an introduction to the people first, and I want everybody to. I want to thank everybody for joining us on the Red Pill Diaries. This is another edition. This is the live version of it. Thank you, son. And before we go into anything, we just gotta let you know what's going on. Um, we have updated versions of a new program to do the show on to stop the buffering. The problem is we're having problems of using that, so we have to go back to StreamYard to use it, and we're having technical difficulties right now. And leading up to starting the show, some cameras were acting up. There's a pause and there's a freeze in certain things, and also we're being like blocked a little bit. I won't go into that part, but I will say this. Yesterday, we were suspended again on YouTube. I didn't tell Rashid this because I wanted to save it for the show. As we were setting up the show, we were suspended again. Check this out, and I took the pictures of it. So, if you remind me, I'll bring pictures up to show everybody. Rashid, you got to remind me. While we were scheduling the show, YouTube suspended us on the Red Pill Journals, the sister channel of the Red Pill Diaries, for the video that they suspended us for in December. We've been suspended again for the same video that they suspended the channels for in December. The video that they took down in December, we've been suspended again for it, scheduling the show. Now, the video that we've been suspended for is the interview we did with former U.S. Army psychological warfare officer and director Scott Bennett. It is amazing that as soon as the video started getting tractions into the hundreds of views, immediately we were suspended. We appealed it to no avail, and they suspended both channels. But we have been suspended on the Red Pill Journals again on YouTube. So I wanted to let everybody know that, and that is why we haven't been doing any live shows, because we have been suspended, and they suspended us the last 2 weeks of December and the first 2 to 3 weeks of January of the new year. All right, so we just have to inform you of what's going on. Also, we have pictorial proof, picture proof that YouTube has been taking subscribers from us. As multiple subscribers subscribe, they take them from us. And we sat down and we just started taking pictures so that the people would see. This is why the channel has not been growing like other channels have been growing, because as we talk on very informative and very I would say touchy issues, it gets to the heart of other people who don't want those issues touched upon. But now let's go into the show. Again, thank you for joining us, Rashid. Before we talk about any geopolitics, what is going on in California? I read a mass shooting that took the lives of 10 people or more. Have you even
Where was
heard
it supposed to
anything?
be at? Where was it supposed to be at? Where was it supposed to be at?
It was, hold on 1 second. Where is it?
I thought it was in Atlanta. I heard something about it.
Oh, maybe it was. Maybe it was. I was rushing to do the show, and as you saw in the background, as I'm trying to set up everything, the echoing and they were showing double pictures of me and everything like this up until the last second when the show went on. So I was just trying to get a little news in. But the mass shooting, do you think that the politicians ever think that these mass shootings that go on, whether they be in school or whether they be at movie theaters or clubs, do you ever think that they sit down and think maybe this is a product of our domestic and foreign policy?
No, no. Once you're doing evil, you attract evil. So no, they ain't concerned about that. As long as they keep their world domination going on, that's all they're concerned about.
So if these people are so-called elected leaders, and they are elected to be the stewards of a nation, and they are elected not only to push policies, but they are also elected to promote and propagate the progression of the nation. You telling me that they don't have any forethought into, man, maybe our policies, this is blowback to our policies. Maybe when we go around and we have a heavy foot on this community, that community goes off over here, or maybe when we show that we brutalize people over here, or we go into other countries and we brutalize and victimize people over here. When these things go on, you don't think that they have any thought that this is a blowback effect of policy? Because remember, science teaches us that any action has an equal or greater reaction, right?
No, they have no idea. Because, like I said, they're evil people. As the scriptures tell us, as you sow, shall you reap, right?
Yeah.
America was made up on evil, and they ain't concerned about that. The founding fathers were just as evil as the people today.
Yeah.
Let me put it to you this way. They run around hollering about they are good Christians, right? At the same time, you murder and kill off whole continents of people and steal their land. Now, if you don't believe in your own scriptures and don't follow anything that your scriptures tell you, how can in the world can you expect others to do it?
Right.
No, they ain't concerned about that. They going around. I was watching on RT, Matt Taibbi. They had a interview with him, and he was saying that he what's his name? The Twitter guy. What's his name? Elon Musk. Let them have access to the inner workings of Twitter, and come to find out, Matt Taibbi was saying that the government is in all of this stuff. And he was saying that they was cutting off people. And it basically, Twitter is the U.S. State Department. Basically, that's what he was saying. Twitter, Facebook, and all these things. That if you say anything against their mantra, then they'll sit up here and condemn you and come against you. Like I said, if you would be talking about sports, what's happening on Saturday night, or what the party on, you never have any problems. But you sit up here and talk about what's going on around the world, they don't want their own people to hear about that. That's why when you had Scott Bennett on, Scott Bennett is an evil force in there, because he's running around telling the truth. And we can't have nobody telling the truth. But remember, he go to church every Sunday and holler about that he's a good Christian or a good Catholic, but the truth, he wants to run it away. No, he ain't concerned about any of that stuff.
You know, when we look at the situation in America, and I was really thinking about this yesterday. I had a real deep thought on this. I just sat around. I was just looking at you often analyze everything. So our situation in America and the violence that is ravaging, looking at the situation with around the globe. And anyone with common sense can see that we are in the midst of revolution. We're in the midst of a revolt. We're in the midst of the blowback effect of decades upon centuries of failed and I would say racist policies that were instrumented that were instrumental in promoting a certain viewpoint. And now you see the not only do you see countries like Iran and Syria and Venezuela rebelling against certain things like this, you now see people at home rebelling against American policy and dictates, and to the point that there's a great divide within America. And with this split that is going on within the American justice system, the American political system, the American economic system, don't you think that these splits and this brewing division and animosity and hatred, or don't you think that these are ingredients for the implosion of the Republic of America?
Once again, he who does evil, evil is attracted to him, and that's what that is. It is to be result of being the man of sin. Remember that? What the scriptures say? The man of sin will be revealed at the end of time. And all around the world, America is being revealed as the even Martin Luther King said that they could start more trouble than anywhere around the world. They forget about some of the things that he say, that our dream speech they really push, but
no one wants to
telling the truth on them. They never say about that. They never speak about that. And what is happening is that everybody around the world and caught up to it. His trick, he cannot pull off his tricks no more.
Yeah.
As you know, I was thinking about this the other day. That he, with his money, right? You ain't got any telling other countries that they ain't got any money. What they mean is that you don't have none of our money. That is worthless. Yeah, they got the real and the ruble and the yen. That's them people's money. But you're broke because we have not allowed you to take any of our money. And his money is worthless, right? Mm-hmm. Not worth 1 cent. But yet and still, the other people are broke. But they got all of the natural resources, the gold and cobalt and stuff. You see, he's a great con man. America has been a great con man around the world, right? He the top grifter on the planet, got nothing stacked up to America, right? Here he is telling other people to take his worthless dollar bills for their commodities. All of them big giant ships that come over here to America, the Chinese send it, and they ain't gonna never get paid for it. If that's not a con, man, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
Constant ships coming. And what are you gonna give me anything in value? No. Well, what are you gonna give me? I'm gonna give you my dollar bills with my face on it. That's worthless. Boy, you gotta give it to him. But like we said before, the other countries have caught up to his scheme, and now they're rejecting it. This is the reason why war must take place, because you're not gonna take my worthless money no more. Then I'll commit. That's the reason why he attacked Iraq. Because Iraq, Saddam Hussein said, I don't want none of that worthless stuff. The euros, the dollars, it's worth nothing.
Yeah.
That's how currencies are made. My currency is worth something, your currency is worth something. I buy from you, you buy from me, and then you got to give me something back in equal value. That's the reason why Nixon had to go off of the gold standard, because they didn't have no more commodities to give anything. And from the 1971 until now, it's been a big Ponzi scheme. And the rest of the people couldn't.
Oh, hold up. You got to rewind that. It was a Ponzi scheme prior to 1971. Remember, the United States defaulted on its debt when Roosevelt chose to seize the gold in the United States. A lot of people don't know that. That was a national default. But also, remember, the Ponzi scheme started picking up steam as the gold and the silver started going out of the coffers, because they started robbing the coins of the silver in the 1960s. And in 1965, they had robbed all of the dimes and the quarters of the silver, and then it took them a few more years up into 1970 to rob the half dollars of the silver that were in the half dollars. So America continued to lose her standing, and it was de Gaulle, one of the so-called U.S. allies, who called their bluff on it when they saw America spending nonstop. And de Gaulle said, "Man, hey, whoa, you know, we got a lot of treasuries wrapped up in this. What are you doing?" And Nixon, you know, tricky Dick, America's money is as good as gold. De Gaulle said, "Well, then give us gold then." And that's when Nixon took the world off the gold and silver standard, because he did not have the gold that was necessary to redeem the treasuries or the U.S. Outstanding debt, and it was going to cause a stampede. So he refused to honor any more redemption in gold and silver. A lot of people, they don't know that, so they look to 2008. They even look to like 2002 and 2003 when they what was the Clinton and the rest of them removed the Glass-Steagall Act or whatever like that. They don't look at prior to, and how all of these things have been a continuation of the downward spiral of American economics and American politics, because they're tied in the same breath. And what we are seeing, it is almost, as I say, I like to give this example. As we look at the brewing divide, the growing divide in America, the brewing anger and resentment and malice and hatred, the growing economic divide, what it says 1 or 2% of the people of America or the world has like 80% of all the wealth or whatever. And as we see this growing, as we see this continue, what we're watching is the death of a world order, of a world. And most people don't realize that is why NATO, that is why the UK, that is why America is everywhere, stoking tensions with everywhere. You know what? It reminds me of growing up. And you know, you have this bully there, and then you have this other kid, and the bully. Everybody think the bully is the bully, but this other kid, no matter where you go, this other kid is in everybody's business and in everybody's mess, and is always the victim. They never started. They're always, if something happens, if a fight starts and he's in, they picked on me. Always. And then as the kids grow up, they start saying, hey, the person that we thought was the bully is not really the bully. It's the one that we thought was the victim. And now it is America. The whole world is starting to realize that the root cause of their problems is American intransigence, racism. Because listen, the root cause of American and Western policy is exceptionalism. And exceptionalism is a code word for racism. They believe that they are the best. Notice they always say the civilized world when they say the world is against China, or the world is against Russia. Now, I want you to think about this. When they talk about the world, they're talking about America, Canada, and Europe, and New Zealand, and Australia, those nations there. Everybody else is third world nations or fourth world nations or something. This is that exceptionalism, that racist mind frame. And it's become acceptable to think like that in the public. They used to hide it. But now they think like that in the public, and they openly speak on this,
Can.
and they'll say that, okay, for instance,
Call.
China has 1.4 billion people. China alone has more people than Europe and America combined. So how can the world be against China when China has more people? Just China alone has more people than Europe and America. This is that exceptionalism, that racist mind frame. And Rashid, I'm getting a feedback from your second phone.
Okay.
It's going, but inherently this is racist. So this is why the United States and NATO is waging a war.
12.
They need to expand. Gregory Manarino said it once on our show when he talked about the monster must be fed. The debt monster must continue to expand and be fed. They must. If America and the West cannot continue to live off debt, the system dies. So what you see America doing is waging war. What does this feed? The military-industrial complex and all of the branches from that. But the thing is, the economies need the raw material. They need the commodities. Russia has the commodities. Russia has raw material. Africa has the commodities. Africa has raw material. South America has the commodities. South America has the raw material, like what we see going on in Peru right now. The coup in South America, play by play. The empire used their lackeys to overthrow the legitimately elected president, installed in their person. The person became heavy-handed with the people who wanted the legitimate president to be put back in place. So they started killing and victimizing the population. America says nothing about this now. Remember, she's the #1 promoter of democracy. The UK is the #1 promoter of democracy. NATO is the #1 promoter of democracy. And they have yet to talk about it. Why? Because of the lithium mines. Why? Because of the copper mines down there. And America wants control of those mines. Go ahead, Rashid. I know you have something to say.
Isn't that his playbook?
Play everywhere. Everywhere.
How many times have this happened in Latin America?
Everywhere.
They did it to Hugo Chavez. They did it to the one in Brazil, right? They did it to the guy in Bolivia.
Talking about the Lula.
Yeah, his successor. I mean, his successor. They pulled the coup off, right? They did it to the one in Brazil. They did it to Argentina, right? That's the reason why they had the Contras. They were trying to do it. Yeah, Bolivia. It is the same old playbook over and over and over and over and over. Right?
And the media stands quiet on it.
Because the media is once again, the media is the government and the media are the same people.
Right. Yeah.
No difference. And they even said that. There's no difference. If this is the reason why you have so much problem with the show. Anytime anyone puts any ulterior viewpoint, you got trouble with it. They shut you off. They do everything they can to shut you down because you're saying something that the government does not want. They don't want. Only thing they want, what they call them, the sheeple. Only thing they want is people out there pushing their what they pushing. That's it. They don't care nothing about nothing else. Just long as you keep going on believing whatever the MSN, that stuff is unwatchable. Like we said before, if you listen to the MSN, any second now, the Ukrainians are going to march into Moscow and hang Putin for his evil crime. But the reality is the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
What it said about the 1984, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what that book was, right?
Yeah.
Continuous war, and what it say? Peace is war, and war is peace. It's the same thing to them.
Yeah.
Whatever they say is the opposite of what you should believe.
Mm-hmm. You know, and a lot of people, I've been listening to this, and I'm glad you brought that point up about Ukraine and brought Ukraine into the perspective of the color revolutions and all of this stuff, because I want to point out a few things to people, because this has not been addressed on any alternative media site. Nobody has connected this. Nobody, and I've watched them. Nobody has connected these points, and I'm going to bring these points to mind. This, and it had, some people say, well, this started in February. The war in Ukraine started in February. Some people say it started in 2014. I'm gonna tell you, listen to me good. It didn't start in 2014. Believe it or not, you have to connect the dots. America was strategically attacking Russia before that. When America and the UK and the French and NATO assassinated their puppet, Rafik Hariri, in Lebanon. They assassinated Rafik Hariri in Lebanon. They put pressure on the Syrian government, who had been the guarantee of security for Lebanon.
In Lebanon.
Because remember, for decades, the Syrian government and military was protecting Lebanon from Israeli and U.S. pressure. Now, with the assassination of Rafik Hariri and his supporters, they put the United States and NATO put pressure on the international community, quote unquote, to remove Assad's troops from Lebanon. This was to weaken Syria's standing in her position, which in return weakens Russia's position, because Russia has a military base there, and Russia has been an ally of Syria for the longest. So look, I want you to see something that was strategic. They attacked Libya. Libya was a Russian ally, right? And a big buyer of Russian armament. This had a blow to the Russian military establishment, because some of the funds that they were expecting from Libya stopped flowing. They strategically moved on Syria. Look what happened. So it made Russia had to react, right? Look what they did in Georgia, a former Soviet republic, the nation of Georgia. When they put in what is his name, Saakashvili. You remember him?
So, one puppet is as good as the next.
Yeah. When they put him in, and he shot up some Russian troops. He shot up some Russian troops, and Russia went in and they whooped them. And America thought that because the Israelis were advising them and NATO had trained them and armed them, that Russia could not beat them. And Russia went in there and mopped the floor with them in a few days. Now, I think it was Russia's fault to not just take Georgia. I believe if it was me, I wouldn't have been dealing with these problems today, because I would have removed all Western influence in Georgia. Me.
You have to understand, Russia and Putin, they wanted to have good relations with the West.
Right.
It's like a woman is getting beat up by her husband.
Yep.
No matter what you do to him, I love him. He don't kill you if you don't stop it. But I just love him. This is what's going on with that. Putin and the West always wanted to be a part of NATO. They want acceptance from the Western Europeans. And the Western Europeans, you really ain't no European. You mongrels. What do they call the Russians? Orcs. We got to get rid of those orcs, right? Back in saying, Saddam Hussein in Iraq was backed by the Soviet Union and Russia.
That's right.
See, what did Clark say? They were going to go on a war of what they're going to overthrow 7 countries.
Yeah.
And the 7 nations were mostly tied to Russia. Right. And get rid of it, like you said, that's what the war been.
And not only were they getting rid of governments that were friendly to Russia, they were also attacking the military industrial complex of Russia, because once the U.S. goes in there, the U.S. Forces those nations to buy U.S. weaponry, which gives a push an economic push to the weapons industry in the West, and then it ties those nations to America for decades to come. So this was more than a twofold off move by the United States, and so now they pushed up into Ukraine, and now they're seeing that the Russians are not playing. Listen, when we tell you that this is a national security threat, this is a national security threat. But let's go back to something else. Had Putin not intervened in 2014, when the Donbass militias were on their way to Kiev, Putin would not be facing this situation right here. Remember, they were days away from taking Kiev. In the United States, listen, the United States, I got to say this, the United States, listen, nobody does this better than the West. Nobody. When you're losing, let's negotiate, let's talk. Let's talk. Enough time, let me buy enough time to get my crew together. And when I get my crew together, there's no need, we need to arm them. There's no need for negotiations. The only way out is to fight. And every time the U.S. loses, they want to talk, they want to conversate, they want to converse with somebody, they want to have all of that. Go ahead.
I remember watching, was it RT or Sputnik or one of them, where they were saying that when the war was going on, when they had the Russian had their foreign soldiers in the Donbass helping them, and they no, it was on that crosstalk with on RT. They were laughing in 2014 that the puppet was going to go and take over Donbass. They were saying in a couple of weeks, this guy's going to be in Kiev, and he's the one that's going to be put in jail. And when Putin intervened and told them to stop, I remember one of the leaders of the Donbass said that he said it's a horrible, it was an elderly fellow. He said it's a horrible mistake. All they gonna do is rearm and come after us. But what the guy at the Donbass didn't understand, that Putin and them Russia always considered our Western partners. Mm-hmm. America ain't never said our Eastern partners. And now since the cover has been pulled off of them, now even Putin and Lavrov and them say he ain't saying our Western partners no more, because he's after them. The old saying is he's trying to appease people that he want to be over with. Russia just treat us as equal. In America's mindset, you're not no equal with us. We defeated you. We defeated the Soviet Union. Why should we put that mind? I want you to understand. America says that, and that's her mind state. But that thought came from the UK, from England. England always thought that they were better than Russia. That's why they waged those wars, the Cossack War, and all those wars over there, because they never accepted Russia as Western. And America, as America was established, America took on that thought too. Go ahead, finish. Well, you can't do that. How in the world can you accept orcs as regular people? What is that? The garden. What did the guy from Russia, Germany say? This is the garden of civilization. Just these European countries and everybody else is a jungle, right? Yeah. So why in the world can you accept anybody like that? They treat everybody else as subhuman, and they the only humans. I have to take this call. Go on, continue talking.
I'll meet you. So we have a comment in the chat, and I'm going to put this up. And matter of fact, we have more comments in. Oh man, let's see. Tiger Silverhane says, and hold on one second. I'm trying to show it, but we're having technical difficulties with. There we are. With StreamYard and with YouTube. Says this: in 2014, Russia could not have shrugged off those sanctions. I was going to get to that. Thank you for that. It says they needed to play nice until they were prepared for that. I do believe that was the main cause of them not allowing that to go. And I also believe that not only were they preparing for the sanctions, I believe that they had to also tweak and perfect. I see you. I'll unmute you in a second. I also believe that they had to tweak and perfect their hypersonic missiles and stuff, and the new technology that they had. And Russia was not fully comfortable with those things, and they believed that if they went too far, that NATO would intervene at the time. I do believe that. So I'm going to give Putin a way out. But I'm just saying, if it was me, they would have had to show and prove to me, because this right here, the loss of tens of thousands of more lives because of American arrogance and imperialism. I would, and most of the world knew, and Russia has some of the best intelligence agencies in the world, so they knew that the military of the West was hollow. So my thing is, they probably couldn't have shrugged off those sanctions, but hey, I would have made nice to China like they make it nice to China now, and I would have shrugged off. Go ahead, Rashid.
First of all they had to do is get out of the way of the militias.
Yeah.
Don't see just like America. He's the one that's doing it. It wasn't get out of the way of the militias. The militias would have took care of the Kyiv. And they the one that overthrew him, not me. Even Putin admitted that was a horrible mistake. And a couple of weeks ago, he admitted that it was a mistake to stop them from overthrowing the Kyiv government. And like we said before, they always wanted to be a part of the EU, European Union. They weren't concerned about China. Even the Russians are looking toward Europe as the way.
Anthony the electrician.
Mute me, brother. Mute me.
Okay.
You hear me? I got to take this call.
Okay. Anyway, so let's see. I'll put this up here by one of our moderators. Let you all see her comment. It says, according to Jewish myths, Russian land were the Canaanite land, so they are not the same white people. That's why the West called them orcs, like Rashid was telling you. They don't accept them as equals. They view them as being mongrelized with the Asian nations. And so if you look at the situation, what roughly 80%, 70 or 80% of Russian territory is Asian. So I mean, the bulk of Russia is in Asia. So they don't when they look at the Russians, they look at them in a sense that they look at Mongolia, or they look at not the China, because they look at China with contempt. The Chinese, they look at them
subhumans.
Yes, subhuman. That's what they look at them, because they don't think that they're on the level with them, and they don't want them to be equal with them, because recognizing them to be equal with them would do away with their racist, exceptional mentality. So again, let me put another comment up. Joseph Borrell, I remember him. Europe is the gardens, and we must keep the jungle from coming into the garden.
Remember, when they say
he's finding out that garden doesn't have the fertilizer, and the garden doesn't have the water, and the garden
oil.
Doesn't have the nutrients to flourish without the so-called jungle. He's finding that out quickly.
This is true. He's finding that out real quick. But what they don't want to, when he looks at, he calls this the world is against you. He talks about Europe, Canada, America, and Australia. Nobody else cares, matters in his mind. Nobody else matters. And so, like we said before, Russia, they made now they realize that there's nothing that they can do to get into the become into the EU or in the good graces of Western Europe. There's nothing they can do. So they got no other choice. The only reason why Putin and them is fighting now is because the barbarians are at the gates.
That's right.
That's it. If America had not done what they done to push Russia to fight, Russia wouldn't be turning toward China. Russia wouldn't be turning toward Iran, giving these jet fighters. They would have never done that. But they are getting pushed themselves. They are being dragged into this war, whether they like it or not.
Mm-hmm. Now, for a minute, let me stop for a second and say this. Also, from now on, when we're suspended off of YouTube, we will still be streaming. You'll be able to check us out on Odyssey, and you'll be able to check us out on the other platforms that we have. We have Locals platform. We're trying to get that up and running so that we can stream there. Locals, Odyssey, Rumble, Twitch, and it's a few more. Twitter. We'll be streaming through those because we know how YouTube does us. You know, we know that YouTube censors us, deletes the videos, and suspends us. And Rashid, do not forget to remind me about the little pictures I took of them suspending me while I'm suspending us while we're scheduling the show or whatever like that. But again, as Rashid said, see, Russia had to be forced into this because remember, the same scenario happened with Georgia, and Russia still withheld the deal that it had made with Iran, with the S-300s and warplanes. So the reason that Russia is now looking at the East and looking at the global South is because they have been put in a bind. And now those nations that were ignored by Russia, they want some concessions because they were trying to tell Russia and warn Russia that, listen, if they get me, they're coming after you. And because Russia wanted so, and I won't say Russia itself. When I say Russia, I'm talking about the leadership of Russia. They wanted so much to be considered European. They wanted so much to be considered the Western world that they ignored the cries and the pleas of Gaddafi. They believed that America wouldn't assassinate Gaddafi. Remember, and then when he was assassinated, it really got under Putin's skin when he watched the way Gaddafi was assassinated, and how not only did they remove the most popular leader in modern history of Libya, but the way that they removed him, and the way that they went after his children and his grandchildren, and they sodomized him before they tortured him and sodomized him.
The same thing with Saddam Hussein. They did the exact same thing with Saddam Hussein. And so Putin sitting up there watching television and saying, that could be me. I could be next. And then from that point on, when he did that, because they had an agreement not to kill. He was going to be in exile. He was going to be in domestic exile, meaning that he would be in Libya, but he wouldn't be a part of the political structure anymore. And they came to an agreement, and the U.S., the French, and the British told him, your convoy must have these white flags over, and immediately a white. Now, mind you, there's something in this that I'm going to point to Ukraine in just a second. Okay, this convoy of government vehicles, which were bulletproof, mine-proof, and all that stuff, and they had satellite radio so they can contact people from in there, just like if Putin was in his car or if the French president was in his car, the same way. So as this convoy was going through Libya, and they contacted, when they got to a certain point, they contacted the West like they had agreed to. The US, the UK, and France had initiated the assassination of Gaddafi. The convoy was in French-made government vehicles. I want you to understand this. So the French had a killer switch in those vehicles, right? This is related to Ukraine too. So when they came to a certain point, the U.S. flew in Reaper drones or something like this, and they blew up the convoy. The women's security guards were raped on the scene, beaten and killed. We saw multiple pictures and videos of that. With U.S., French, and UK special forces standing by the so-called rebels as they tortured the remaining
survivors of the Gaddafi convoy, and they beat and brutalized and sodomized Muammar Gaddafi because he wanted a independent Libya and he wanted an independent Africa. Now, how's that connected to Ukraine? Do you remember a few days ago, the interior minister of Ukraine and his whole crew was shot out of the air in Kiev, and they were trying to blame the Russians for that. Guess what helicopter they were in? A French-made government helicopter. And the man pads were French or, quote unquote, maybe U.S. man pads that shot it down. This is a pattern over and over. When they want to get rid, if you become a liability to them, or even if you are an asset to them and they can use you, your death, to promote their picture of you, then guess what? Bye-bye. They'll kill you. They'll take you out. No second thoughts or anything. Rusty, I know you're dying to say something. Go ahead and say something.
America has a history of this. How many treaties did the Indians have with America? Thousands. He broke every last one of them. Every last one. Now, he has a history of saying, like what he did with General Qasim, right?
Right.
Come over to Baghdad. We're going to talk peace. And then as soon as you get there, blow up your car. We here in America know this man. And we don't feel anything. If he say right, we say you better go left. If he say up, you better go down. The rest of the world have not caught up on it. Same thing with Gaddafi. Gaddafi let that son of his talk him into, Dad, the Western said that they're going to be with you. Let's get rid of all our weapons and let's go a part of the way. And he did it, and look what happened to him.
Right.
Same thing with Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was a part, Russia was backing him. Then after the Ayatollah took over, he let the American government talk him into attacking Iran. And then after the thing went down, they got rid of him. It's like you say, it's a pattern. Anybody who believes the West deserves what they get.
Yeah.
Because these people are untrustworthy. Putin and them found out that a little bit later. Putin and them said he's untrustworthy.
No, hold on. They're agreement incapable. Remember that. That's what he said. They are agreement incapable.
The light bulb went on his head. It said, like you said, these people are incapable of having agreement. Something that the Indians had found out for 500 years. The white man of America, what did he say? He speaks with forked tongue.
Yeah.
Remember, what in nature has a forked tongue? A snake.
So, for those of you who are listening, I'm in the chat real quick with the people. So please forgive me if I'm looking down. So, let's see. I'm pinning a few things to the top of the chat. Hold on one second. Someone asked me a question.
But anyway, America had to be Putin, even to the Chinese, have to be. They have to be brought. They are being brought down to find out that you cannot make any agreements with America because she is fallen. She is fallen, and in her fall, she's gonna strike out at everybody.
Right. You know, speaking of that, let me go back to something real quick. Okay, and she's losing friends. Listen, the common sense would tell you. Common sense with anyone would tell you if you're in a deep hole, stop digging. But not with America, the UK, and NATO. They're in the hole. Well, then we're gonna just dig our way through the center of the earth, and we'll wind up in China. You know. So
what did the old saying say? Only thing they see is have a hammer, Every situation.
There's a
Bam,
head.
bam, bam. That's all they can see. They can't see anything else but the hammer the problem. And like you say, it keeps digging and going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. What he done is he done got the whole world against him. Like you say about that bully, right? Everybody is seeing that he is not what he said he is. And now everybody is coming together against him, and he's striking out very dangerous at all countries.
Yeah. And so as I was saying, America is in such a bind. Common sense would tell you, why would I alienate and piss off people who I expect to buy my debt? Because without people funding my debt, then everything goes up in the flames. Why would I surround these people and hold a gun? That, you know what? America policy reminds me of this. Okay, you have this guy who needs someone to help him pay his bill. Instead of him continuing, these people have helped them before. Instead of being honorable, they go up to him and stick a gun to it and give me your money. Okay, now if I give you this money this time and I walk away, do you expect me to give you the money the next time? Or do you expect me to come back with me something to hold up to your head? The politicians, the military, it seems like the minds. Yeah,
it's like a robber. Like you just said, if I take a gun and stick it in somebody, steal it after he done got all of it, the next thing I can do, instead of sticking the gun, I'm gonna pistol whip him, and he gonna give it to me.
Yeah,
that's the mindset of a robber, and that's what America is. They are robbers. They don't care. It goes back to, like I always say, back in the feudal era. I'm the king, and whatever I say goes.
Right.
And I can't conceive of a point where somebody won't do as I say.
Huh.
All of my evils and all that, make them. I'm on top. You not on top. You gotta accept what I do to you, and you can't have anything to say about it. And if you do say something, I'm gonna bring down the hammer on you. But like Paul Craig Roberts said a couple of years ago, he was being interviewed. And he was asking someone, the guy, he was saying, well, America has no gold. And the guy said, what? America has no gold? He said, where's America's gold at? He said, it's in China. Gerald Celente, no, Jim Willie always said, at Fort Knox, he said, we ain't got no gold at all. He said, do we got nothing? He said, we might have a couple of gold coins in the bucket. But we got nothing. And from that point on, all it's been is a Ponzi scheme. From that point on, from when Nixon did it to now, they got nothing. Only thing they got to do is actually monopoly money is better than the American dollar, because at least you get something in your hand. And then now the American dollar is just punching up on a computer. I want $1 trillion. Okay, you got $1 trillion.
Yeah,
with no value behind it. And this is what's scaring the American leadership to the heaven. All of these cats run around, Elon, $1 billion here and $1 billion. He got it on the computer. $1 billion on the computer, nothing of tangible assets.
Tiger says this because we were talking about the French kill switching on these things. And Tiger says, well, the Israelis buy a lot of U.S. equipment, but they insist they all have their own electronics and software running on it. I guess now I know why. That's why the Iranians, as soon as they got the S-300s from Russia, they put their own codes in. The Iranians change, whenever they get something, they change, because they have very qualified, high qualified technicians. They change the codes in those things. As a matter of fact, if you can Google this, a few years ago, one of their submarines that they had got from Russia was set to be overhauled. And Russia, this was prior to this event in Ukraine, Russia insisted that Iran bring the submarine to Russia to be refitted and refurbished. And Iran was adamantly against that. They said because our submarine could be seized, and because you have not honored the agreement with the S-400, S-300s, and the other stuff that came with the deal. So what Iran did was they demonstrated their technological prowess not only to the American in the West, but they demonstrated their technological prowess to Russia by refurbishing it and refitting the submarine themselves and selling it themselves, and showing the world that they had the full capability to do this, even if Russia didn't honor their contract.
Ayatollah is the one that pushed them to do that. The Ayatollah said that we got to be able to make sure and make our own weapons, unlike the rest of them countries over in Africa and Asia and all of them who sit up there and take the American or the Russian weapons and don't have the sense enough to know that they can put a kill switch on. They say they even got kill switches on cars.
Yeah. Yeah.
They got kill switches on all of this stuff.
Yeah.
If you're not watching out, you'll give you something, and then that'll be the vehicle for your destruction. So Iran should have done that. But what we got to understand, they got a lot of Jews in Russia who wants the West. Same thing within in Iran. The Shah's people never left.
That's right.
They there pushing the Western line. Same thing within in Beijing. You got Chiang Kai-shek's people still over there pushing. They want everybody to go to the West. Unless you with the West, you really ain't living. Unless you have the Western stuff, then you really ain't got nothing.
Mm-hmm.
When it's the other way around.
You know, speaking of kill switches, I remember this was a long time ago. I had a Chevy Trailblazer. Had just made my last payment. I had my mom in the car, and I think I had my daughter in the car, if I'm not mistaken. And I went to pay the last payment on it. And I get in there, and they said my mom was in there too. And I think we were out I forget what we were doing. I was taking her somewhere, but we were in there to pay my last payment on the truck. And so they said, hey, before you leave, they went to get my title and everything, the full payment title and everything. They said, hey, before you leave, we need to I need to send the mechanic out there because they have to take off some kind of tatter switch or something. I was like, huh? Yeah, this lets us know where you are at all times, and they can kill the engine and stuff. I didn't even know that at the time. Yeah. My mom was like, what? And I was like, huh? So we found out that when I went to pay the last payment, because I had paid my car beforehand, and they were like, oh, we wasn't expecting this. So now you got to give us time to go out there and do this. And they sent the mechanic out to remove something off of there that gave them the GPS location of you and could kill your engine if they decided to.
That's the reason why they can give you a car, because they can always, we know where it's at. We can repossess it at any time. You don't pay the payments, we'll cut it off.
Yeah, I'm telling you. So these kill switches are real. These kill switches are real. As a matter of fact, they have gotten so advanced that now the power companies don't even need to send a technician out to your house now. They can just turn off the power from the office. That was not the case a while ago, years ago. They had to send people out there to do that. They have replaced those boxes with kill switches. They give it a different name, smart boxes, but those are kill switches. The cable company, I don't have cable, I have the app stuff, but the cable companies with those boxes, do you remember 20 years ago, the cable company would have to come out there and disconnect the cable thing from the box and all of that stuff, and now they just turn it off from the office, the kill switch. That stuff is in every line of technology today. So it's not far-fetched to think about it in missiles and rockets and helicopters and submarines and stuff like that. That's not far-fetched. So, but as we're talking on this situation, I wanted to bring something up. Because we're seeing the things that's going down in Central America, and this has everything to do with what's going on with Africa too, a direct correlation. There was a few days ago, about a week and a half ago, an African nation announced that they will be importing oil and gas from their African neighbor, and they'll be doing it in their local currencies. Listen to me good. This teed America off so bad. that right after that you had an influx of protests in that area, something like that. You know how America is. It's democracy, baby. but the same thing that is happening in Peru. The people want now. People don't know this, that those protests that are going on have held 2 to 5% of the copper mines in the world out of the hands of the industry, because of the protests have shut down these things. Some of the lithium mines that went on in Bolivia. So now in Africa, America has an influx of, what is it, Boko Haram, which is the offshoot of ISIS, which is the offshoot of Al Qaeda, to destabilize these regions, because now these nations are talking about, you know what, doing trade in our local currencies, that removes the middleman, and then we can save money, because a lot of people don't know that doing trade in the dollar not only gives America exorbitant amount of leverage over your economies and your policies, but America gets paid a fee for every transaction that nations do in the dollar.
Why is it that everybody that has a problem with America, Boko Haram shows up at their front door?
Yeah.
Boko Haram or the Jihadi ISIS or the Al Qaeda, anybody that's got a problem with America, the Jihadis come a knock. Also, I heard,
and then the French
last night. Also, I heard last night that Brazil and Argentina are making a common currency. All of this stuff is hitting at the empire. See, everybody is starting to do this. The empire, he's like a man with a brush fire, and he's trying to, with his bare feet, every time he turn around, another fire, and he try to stomp it out here, and he got it's mushroom. That's what that happened. It's all over the place. That's happening. Nothing but troubles is coming to the empire and their minions.
Yeah, and this is going on. Not just that. What you just said, but multiple. We talked about it. And as a matter of fact, I pulled it up. I'll pull it up right here. It says major South American states move to cut reliance on U.S. dollar. Now, here's the kicker. This was supposed to be implemented when they ousted Lula. And put in their boy, the one that went to Miami. After he lost, they put him in. Lula is the most popular politician in the history of Brazil, actually, and he won, and he was overthrown in a coup, and now he's back as the president. And one of his first things that he did was fire one of the top general, and now he promoted a Southern Command general to the head of the chief of staff, and right after that, he announced that Argentina and Brazil would be instrumental in trying to put it. It won't be just a 2-nation currency. They're trying to put together something that will be a regional currency in conjunction with Bolivia and Venezuela.
Wait a minute, brother. Haven't we heard this before? With Gaddafi and Mubarak and the rest of them?
But the difference
that's what they was trying to do. That's the reason why they went and overthrew them.
Yeah.
To do exactly what Brazil and the rest of them are doing. Why in the world would you allow somebody to have leverage over you? It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't.
All of them should do this. Take that American dollar and ship it back to America and do stuff on your own. Fight for your own people. Don't fight for somebody that considers you a subhuman. This is what China them the rest, but they gotta see. China, Russia, and all of them had to come to the realization that America's after us.
Now listen, when we look at the dollar and we see these nations moving, and I'm going to play a clip shortly, but we see these nations moving towards ousting the dollar from their trade, because they're tired of America fomenting strife and unrest in their country, because America, she has, like I said, she has leverage over nations when they use the dollar. She can use the Federal Reserve to raise interest rates, and it may cause food and energy to spike in another nation. And she does that on purpose to send warning shots to those nations or to overthrow governments, because people are mad that they can no longer, their purchasing power has been destroyed and stuff like that. This is what America does. Now, we see more and more nations moving to oust the dollar, but we see America being more belligerent. And some people ask, because I got an email, well, if that's the case, then why is Great Britain, or they say the UK, why is the UK and why is the European Union so invested? Well, let me tell you, most people don't know that the US dollar and the UK sterling pound is tied. And also the euro is a machination of America. So the euro also is tied to the dollar. Now, if the dollar falls, it is tantamount to this. If you have a house and you have these structures, you have these structures in the house, and you have a weight-bearing pillar in the house that is going to keep the structure sound and safe. If you remove that weight-bearing pillar, the house no longer becomes structurally safe or viable to live in. It is condemned, and that is what is going on. The reason that the UK and the EU, quote unquote, NATO, is so invested is because their economic lives are tied to this. Their economies are tied to this. And if the dollar falls, and I muted you, I'll unmute you in a second because I heard your phone ring. But if the dollar falls, right, then the standard of living in the Western world, the standard of living in America, and the standard of living in Britain, and the standard of living in the so-called European Union or the Garden, or what they call the civilized world, will go through the floor. And then things will be changed because Europe has little to no resources. The UK has little to no resources. America has resources, but it's money to extract those resources. And if your money is no longer valuable, then how in the world can you get those resources when the people that you held a gun to no longer will invest in core technologies and companies that will extract the resources for you? So they are fighting to maintain the Western world order, or the rules-based order. So it's connected. The euro, the pounds, the sterling pound or pound sterling, and the dollar, and also the economic lives of all three participants, the European Union, the UK, and America, are tied up in American imperialism. If America can't go into Africa and dominate, then France will be left there. And you see what's happening in France. She's catching hell right now in Africa. All of her former colonies are rebelling against French occupation. All of her colonies are saying, as a matter of fact, Burkina Faso has just, the military has just issued, they want all French troops out of Burkina Faso by the end of the month. Now, remember Mali did that? Remember Carr? Remember all of this? See, there's a domino effect of this stuff. Go ahead, say what you
Didn't the leader of the European Union tell Russia to stay out of Africa? Africa is ours.
Our Africa,
right?
Our Africa. Yeah.
That's right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what he said. As a matter of fact, I'm
anybody that thinks for themselves or thinks for their people is an enemy. That's the reason why they killed Lumumba, because he was thinking for his people. That's the reason why they killed Gaddafi, because he was thinking for his people.
Russia just held a ceremony a few days ago in honor of Patrice Lumumba. They just did that. And
they got streets.
Yeah,
they got
Ukraine.
Streets named
one of the main
after.
highways is named Patrice Lumumba.
Yeah. Anybody that fights for themselves is the enemy of the West. And this is the reason why they own the cause the war with Iran. Did you see that article?
Hold on one second. Hold that thought. Hold that thought about that article. Do not lose that thought. I want to bring up something that you just said. I told you I was going to pull it up because I want to prove to you what you say. And here it is right here. And it says, Lavrov says EU foreign minister, you know, the Mr. Europe is a garden and everybody else is a jungle. Lavrov, who is the foreign minister, which is equivalent to the U.S. Secretary of State. Sergei Lavrov says EU foreign policy head told him to stay out of our Africa. That's what he says. And it says right here, with the terrorist fighting government in Mali in talks with a private Russian military firm. You know what that private Russian military firm is?
they just sanctioned it yesterday.
All of the Western nations are sanctioning this Russian military. Now they didn't sanction Blackwater when they was over there torturing and murdering and committing genocide. And these were Western former military people who were a part of a security system called Blackwater. They were over there killing Muslims and blacks and whites and everybody else. They didn't sanction them, but the Wagner group of Russia, who is fighting in Ukraine, who just seized some strategic cities in Ukraine, and who helped protect the Malian government and push the French out, and who are now moving into different areas in the Burkina Faso and the rest of them to help push some of in CAR. Also, I played a clip about that too. That they're pushing these out. They're terrorists. And listen what he says.
Now wait a minute, brother. They're not terrorists. They're all drunk and they're taking drugs. They're drunkards and drugs. And they're all criminals. They all come from Russia's jail.
Yeah, that's what they say to them.
And then wait a minute. The worst part of it is they getting their equipment from North Korea. Kill.
But they can make us lies, can it? They can make us
lies.
Now, remember they were saying that North Korea didn't have the technology. But let's go to this. It says, with the terrorist fighting government of Mali in talks with a private Russian military firm, EU foreign policy chief Joseph Borrell told Russia's foreign minister Sergei Lavrov to bluntly stay out of Africa, allegedly calling it our place. See, listen to me good. They won't say this in front of the cameras. It slipped during the Ukraine war, you know, with the journalists and stuff saying that we can sympathize with these people. They are blonde hair, blue-eyed people like us. It's not some place in Somalia, and you know they were actually saying this stuff live on
Iraq or the Middle East or something, or Yemen.
They are civilized people, you know.
Yeah.
These were journalists, so-called respected journalists, saying this on live television. No blowback form or anything. So this is what I'm telling you about the racist and imperial mind of the West, and it's intrinsic. It is inherent in them because the policies that the European Union and America use are almost identical. Whenever they say they're going to fight terror, what they do is they unleash terror so that they can justify their presence in those nations, so that they can divide the populations and find the dissatisfied there and give them some crumbs off the table to destabilize the government and the nation so that they can extract the minerals and the resources for little to no money. And they can bring it back to Europe and refine it and sell it back quadruple and 10 times and 100 times the price of extraction. That's what goes on.
As long as Russia and China them could get the economic benefits of being subservient to the West, it wasn't a problem.
Right.
But now, since Russia and China, the empire America has brought war to their doorsteps. Now Russia's saying he's going into Africa. He's going into these different spots. He no longer feels that that's America's territory. And like we said before, that Wagner group, these are some terrible fighters, baby.
These were Spetsnaz.
They are wiping the floor with the American NATO army. if they can do that in Ukraine, they can do it in Poland. They can do it in France. They can do it in Russia. I mean, do it in Sweden, and they can do it in the UK. This is the reason why we got to stop this right now. If not, like I heard a commentator say, well, if they can beat up on our army in Ukraine, what's to stop them from coming over there and doing it to us?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reason why he's all in for this Ukrainian war, but it's not turning out the way it is. And like we said before, the reason why Russia did not unleash hell, because she still wanted to be, she still wanted to be a friend of America.
Right. I wanna go to a clip. This goes in line to what we were talking about with Europe, the United States, and Africa. See, Africa has been the memory gland of the West, of the free memory gland of the West. You know how a baby is breastfed. That has been the West. The West has been the baby, and Africa.
On the tip. Yeah,
that's right. And Africa has been that memory gland, and so now Africa no longer wants to feed the West, and so it's chaos. And notice this. I want to bring a point home. Notice everywhere that China or Russia or someone is investing in, or where there's resource rich areas or minerally rich areas, America and the West are always there, or there's always some kind of war, destabilization, or division there. Why is that? If in math, they tell us when you want to do a problem, when you want to solve a problem, you take the multiplier times the multiplicand and you come up with the product. Or you look at common denominators. And we know that, well, they say that there's terror in Afghanistan. But who was in Afghanistan? America. Well, there's terror on the Korean Peninsula. But who's on the Korean Peninsula? America. Well, there's aggravation of tensions between China and Japan. Well, who's in Japan? America. Well, there's tension brewing across Africa. Well, who's occupying parts of Africa? America. Well, in the Middle East, the Horn of Africa, Middle Eastern area. Well, there's division, there's war going on. Well, who's there? America and Europe and Latin America. Who's there? America and Europe. Now check this out, because I want to show you the hypocrisy of the West, and then I'm going to play this clip. America, France, the UK, and the European Union can always justify deploying their troops to other people's nations, right? But they always whine about a supposedly threat to their nations. They don't want anyone outside of the West to put boots on their grounds, but they see no problem with building illegal military installations in other people's countries, be it Syria, be it Libya, be it Colombia, be it anywhere in Africa or Asia. They have no problem with that. America is still in Korea, and it's been 60 plus years. She's still in Japan, and World War II has been over
70
decades. Decades. So I want you to listen to this. This is a short clip, so pay close attention to this, and you'll see America getting ready to try to make a rounds to try to upend China and Russia's move in Africa.
The U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen will touch down in the West African state of Senegal this Friday. It's all part of Joe Biden's intention and campaign promise to give more focus to Africa over the next 2 years. Yellen's message will mirror that of her colleague, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, who was on his African safari last year in August. Yellen will highlight the strides that the continent has made over the last couple of decades, while also emphasizing that the United States is a partner and a friend to the continent. The irony here, of course, is that the African continent has developed in spite of America's absence and neglect. Africa would not be where it is today without the massive Chinese investment in infrastructure and mineral resources. But the visit is also part of a larger contest of influence on the continent. The US government sees the growing influence of other superpowers, namely Russia and China, as a threat to American interests. Here's the view of the official US-Africa strategy.
The People's Republic of China, by contrast, sees the region as an important arena to challenge the rules-based international order, advance its own narrow commercial and geopolitical interests, undermine transparency and openness, and weaken US relations with African peoples and governments. Russia views the region as a permissive environment for parastatals and private military companies, often fomenting instability for strategic and financial benefit.
The three-country visit starting in Senegal will also include Zambia and South Africa, and it comes fresh off the heels of the US-Africa summit held early in December. President Joe Biden hosted over 40 African heads of states in Washington, and during the summit, his administration made deals and commitments to the tune of some $15 billion over the next 2 years to the continent, which pales in comparison to the Chinese quantum. Like many African countries, however, Zambia is struggling with debt and is defaulted on its debt repayment in 2020. It's one of many African countries to apply to the G20 for its nearly $13 billion worth of debt to be restructured under the common framework mechanism of the G20. China holds a third of Zambia's debt. But despite that, the Western line has been to vilify the Eastern giant, even though the majority of Zambia's debt is held in Western institutions. In Africa's southernmost country, a growth-resistant economy is being further hampered by the growing intensity of power cuts. Despite South Africa's woes, Yellen is expected to push Cyril Ramaphosa and his cabinet on the pace of transitioning from coal to cleaner energy sources. The United States is one of 5 countries that's promised South Africa $8.5 billion to ditch coal for greener energy sources. But there's no such thing as a free lunch, and weary Africans will be looking out for the preconditions that the United States government is so well known for. Karabo Lehlahla for RT, Johannesburg.
This has a lot to do with what's going on. Earlier, we talked about nations buying weapons. Oh, Russia, I got to get this point out. I got to get it out because it was on my mind, and it's I'm about to lose it. Africa. Earlier we were talking about Africa, and we were talking about other nations and how nations are turning to Russia for weapons and stuff. Well, a lot of people don't know this, but in most weaponry, South Africa is independent. It produces quality weapons. As a matter of fact, South Africa sells a lot of weapons. And also South Africa is known to be the only nuclear power a nation in Africa. We know that Algeria has nuclear power, but South Africa actually had nuclear bombs and they disarmed. I think they had between 10 and 30 nuclear weapons or whatever like that. And they're going to be having naval war games with China and Russia. So listen, all of this is connected. There is no coincidence that Blinken went to Africa, and now Biden wants to go to Africa and wants to try to bribe and set preconditions to try to do a roundabout in on Russia and China. I want to say this right here. I want to bring this up because this, even though this is not South Africa, I'm going to tie this in. Okay, here it is about the Burkina Faso article right here, and it says Burkina Faso wants French troops gone within a month. And I'm going to read a little bit of that, and that has everything to do with what's going on with the U.S. This is a concerted effort by the Western world to try to divide Africa so that they can remain fragmented and it can be exploited. They want to vilify anybody that is willing to give Africa a hand in where China has turned over technologies. They're invested in infrastructure. They're invested in education. And I'm not saying that China is 100% good. I'm just telling you the benefits of a partnership with China. And they are also helping these nations economically. And Russia has a hand in it too. But you notice when America sees that she can always point out faults and thoughts about what they believe is going on. So as we think of that, we should look at the word projection. Projection. The word projection means it refers to unconsciously taking unwanted emotions or traits you don't like about yourself and attributing them to someone else. So when they say China is recolonizing Africa, Well, China didn't colonize Africa. So who colonized Africa? It was the West, right? China is exploiting Africa. Well, who exploited Africa the most? Stealing trillions of dollars of resources, hundreds of millions of lives. As a matter of fact, what is it? Leopold, King Leopold, how many did he just murder because he felt bad that day? 60 million Africans in the Congo? Just because he was mad. Go ahead.
The mass shooting is out here in Monterey Park, California.
It is in California. Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
10 people dead.
Now, on this Burkina Faso, the French see that their leverage in Africa is receding, and they blame Russia and China for this. Now, mind you, I thought they said that every nation is supposed to be able to choose their own destiny. Didn't they say that about Ukraine? Well, Ukraine is a sovereign state. Russia should not have any say in this direction. But its own destiny, every nation has an inherent right to do that. But what about the African nation? Huh? So you're telling
hypocrisy knows no limits.
Right. And so listen, you're right. Absolutely, Rashid. Absolutely. And it says Burkina Faso, a West African country, was a former French colony until it gained its independence in 1960. The landlocked land of honest men has suffered from recurring droughts and military coups. Since its last coup on September 30, 2022, the military has since taken control of the country in an effort to fight jihadism. You know, that jihadism that America exports and then blames it on Muslims and calls it extremism, Muslim extremism and Islamism, that jihadism that is made in Washington, D.C., Brussels, Paris, London, and Berlin, when they call them Muslims, extremism, what they say, Muslim extremism.
What about the wait a minute? What about the Azov battalion? They not extremes?
That's what I'm saying. Now look, check this out. Burkina Faso's military regime has demanded that France pull its troops from their country within a month. The Burkina State News Agency reported on Saturday. France has around 400 soldiers stationed in Burkina Faso. Now, I'll stop right there because whether you know this or not, France, Canada, Germany, Australia, and I didn't mix my words when I said Canada. They have illegal outposts in some of these African nations. They frequently flaunt the sovereignty of these nations by not even requesting government approval to deploy troops or to fly their warplanes through the airspaces of those nations. They flaunt it all the time, but you hear nothing about this in the Western press. So sound. He said sound. Oh, okay. I was looking in the chat. I got some. Okay, but listen, we're going to go into something because we want to show you that there's a pattern going on. Okay. Listen to this right here, and I want you to hear the hypocrisy of this stuff. I mean, if Rashid and I say it, it can be dismissed. But I want you to hear the hypocrisy of American leaders and how they believe that they are exceptions to the rule and they can go 10,000 miles away and post up in Korea. They can post up in Japan. They can post up in Georgia and in Ukraine. They can post up in Somalia and Yemen. They can post up everywhere. But other nations have no right to have friends and invite them into their own sovereign territory. Remember what they said now. Every nation has the sovereign right to determine their future. And America ignored Russia's demand about deploying troops into Ukraine, right? Right on Russia's border. And America is talking about something that's going on in Latin America. I want you to listen to this.
Some U.S. officials think there is not enough of a U.S. presence in Latin America. A top American general has warned Washington's elites that the U.S. needs to step up its game to compete with the growing influence of Russia and China in the region.
This is very concerning to me, to see the tentacles of the People's Republic of China in the countries of the Western Hemisphere. We are very much in a strategic competition in the Western Hemisphere. A total of 9 countries have Russian equipment in them, and we are working to replace that Russian equipment with United States equipment. We have a lot at stake. This region matters. It has a lot to do with national security. We need to step up our game.
General Laura Richardson heads the U.S. Southern Command, responsible for security cooperation in Central and South America. It also includes the protection of Washington's military assets there. This is not the first time Richardson has emphasized the strategic importance of the region for the U.S., especially its rich resources.
This region is so rich in resources. It's off the charts rich. 60% of the world's lithium is in the region. You have heavy crude, you have light sweet crude, you have rare earth elements. There are adversaries that are taking advantage of this region every single day, right in our neighborhood. And I just look at what happens in this region in terms of security, impacts our security, our national security, in the homeland and in the United States.
Washington's relations with some of its Latin American neighbors have been particularly strained since last year, when it refused to invite the leaders of Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua to a summit of the Americans that it was hosting. Meanwhile, China and Russia have been increasing investments in the region, including for critical infrastructure, as well as providing military equipment. We heard from a political expert who says the U.S. stance of hegemonic rule over the Western Hemisphere is no longer fits with the rising water polo world.
Well, I think that for most Americans, their interests are not the same as the interests of the Pentagon or the interests of Wall Street. So in my view, American people have and can continue to have a great influence in Latin America. It just cannot be in the form of oppression or in the form of a subjugation of the peoples or the plundering of the natural resources of Latin America. So who should worry is the Pentagon, is Wall Street, because what they want is to maintain a relationship of dependence from Latin America towards the US, the old Monroe Doctrine, to call Latin America its backyard, or as President Biden said, its front yard. Ultimately, Latin America should be free, and indeed is becoming more and more free of being able to pick its partners, its allies, its relations throughout the world. And Russia and China are two great powers that one cannot help but to have some relation with. There's no country that, due to ideological preferences, can afford to ignore Russia or China.
So in that video, you see them saying exactly what we were talking about. And think about the hypocrisy of that general. She talked about the resources of Latin America as if it was America's resources. She talked about those nations choosing Russian weapons in preference to U.S. weapons, and said they had to do something about that and change the Russian weapons for American weapons. And it goes back to what we were saying at the beginning, that America overthrows these governments, and then she puts in place her leaders that she approves of, and then they enter into these agreements where only a few of the elite of those countries get the crumbs off the table, and then it ties the military industrial complex to America, where the top generals and officers are trained at the schools of Americas, and when America wants to, she overthrows the government again, and then they put into play weaponry that's American weapons that now you have to be an ally, because now America has to refurbish them and upgrade them, right? Every now and then, and also America has to service those weapons. So the military industrial complex gets big bucks for that. Go ahead.
And then they're going to replace Russian weapons with inferior American weapons.
Right.
Something that they done made in 1902. Send that to them. And then when they go up against somebody with China, right, they get their clock clean.
Yeah.
You know, I was thinking about that when you was playing that clip about Africa. With all them countries, the brothers sitting up there talking about getting with this Russian Sergei Glazunov with the Asian Union, he's advocating not to pay the West nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And let's all go to the East and make up our own deal and not pay them nothing. If we own you $100 billion, when tell them to mail it to me. You know, we'll mail it. The check is in the mail.
Yeah. So, but you know, that was not even his. But listen, that thought was around before him. That's something that, as we say, was around with Gaddafi and even around with Patrice Lumumba. You know, and that's what made these people so dangerous to the Western world, because that ideology, and it transcended the depth of these men. And now it is something that is pervasive across the Eastern Bloc or the global South. And what we're watching is a slow grind for dollar rejection and dollar decline and the collapse of the Western world. We're watching it. Now I want to play another clip on this about Latin America. I do this for a specific reason. Rashid and I, we are adamant that we show you the hypocrisy of everybody, okay? And you don't even hear this coming from the major alternative media sites or the so-called mainstream media. But we dig into the crates and we get this stuff for you to show you the true mind and the true thoughts of these people and how they continue to quadruple down on failed policies. And it's like this, you know how a person is on drugs, and they're swift and fast talker or alcohol. They have to talk quick because they're scheming. They're trying to scheme, put a scheme on you. Now they think that you're believing them, and they think that everybody around them is believing them. But in reality, everybody around them, including you, it's like, I hope this person don't think I'm believing them. This is too fantastical, right? That's America. That's her politicians. That's her military men, like with General Milley, the head of the Joint Chiefs, the staff. He's the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Check this out. He's the head of the military, and he says Ukraine is having a tough time fighting Russia. No, let's be real about it. The West is having a tough time fighting Russia. Russia is fighting America. As a matter of fact, some U.S. and British special forces were captured a few days ago, and some were killed on the battlefield. And also, the U.S. and the U.K., and I'm going to play this about Latin America, but I got to say this since it's on my mind. The U.S. and the U.K., because they've been losing so bad on the battlefield, they had a plan to send suppressors, what they call suppressors, people to suppress the flow of what Russia is doing. And they had snipers to start killing civilians in the towns where Russia was approaching. This is real. This is on Patreon. It goes more in depth on Patreon. And what they were doing is getting ready to deploy these, and they had deployed them in certain areas to cause mass casualties so that they can use that in the press to demonize Russia. Now, think about the mind of these people. So you're just going to go and kill 10,000 or 2,000 people of this town because you're losing the war, and you want to demonize people who are beating you in the war that you started. Bloodshed. Megalomaniac. I call them berserkers. So listen, okay, right here.
A tide is turning left in Latin America, but in an era of multipolarity, the region will be a key battleground for the East-West power showdown. After decades of civil war, NATO partner Colombia historically elected its first ever leftist president, Gustavo Petro. A critic of the U.S. and its role via the so-called war on drugs, Petro pushed for ending fracking projects and reining in oil exportation, which accounts for more than 40% of the country's exports, of which the U.S. is the #1 customer.
The United States is practically ruining all the economies of the world. They make decisions to protect themselves alone, sometimes without thinking about what will happen through their measures. The economies of Latin American nations are being drained.
The U.S. has invested over $13 billion in the country, so Petro's reestablished relationship with their enemy, Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro, also an ally of Russia, might seem to present a huge concern for Washington.
Meanwhile, Russia, a more immediate threat, is increasing its engagements in the hemisphere as Putin looks to keep his options open and maintain relationships in our near abroad.
And it's not just Colombia. In Brazil, even amid protests of election fraud, right-wing populist Bolsonaro's out and progressive Lula da Silva is in. Yet Lula, who is no fan of Washington, reminded everyone that they went after him and other nations to get a hold of their resources.
It's very clear that American prosecutors were interested in my imprisonment, and I think that the goal was to change the logic of Petrobras. Most of the big wars we've had have been over petroleum. The Iraqi invasion was because of petroleum. The Libya intervention was because of petroleum. The attempt to invade Venezuela was also because of petroleum.
In total, a plethora of leftist leaders more critical of the West have recently emerged in Latam. Let's take a look. Xiomara Castro won the Honduras presidency in 2021, 12 years after her husband, then president, was removed via a military coup pushed by then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton under the Obama administration. And in Chile, center-left Gabriel Boric, presenting a liberal alternative to the Pinochet era, won last year. Leftist rural leader and union leader Pedro Castillo won Peru's presidency in June of 2021. And in nearby Bolivia, Luis Arce of the Movement Towards Socialism was elected in 2020, recuperating the country from the one that ousted Evo Morales in 2019 with backing of the Trump administration. No surprise, it didn't take long for the U.S. to suggest there is a reason for that shift.
The Chinese Communist Party is actively exporting its governance model across the hemisphere. It's conducted party-to-party engagements. So we simply can't afford to let the Chinese Communist Party expand its influence and absorb Latin America and the Caribbean into its private political economic bloc.
According to Forbes, China has invested $17 billion in projects in Latam. BRICS, which accounts for 40% of the global population and a quarter of the world's GDP, is growing and displaying the incoming power in a multipolar world. The war in Ukraine also had its influence and brought back pre-existing anti-imperialist sentiments, leading many countries to seize the momentum against Western hegemony. But it's clear Latam's shift to the left is driven more by what the new allies can offer in terms of helping their economy rather than ideology. However, Washington is missing one thing. Latin American leaders are not coming to the podium with hammers and sickles. Perhaps these countries aren't bringing in communist China and maybe just want the U.S. out of their affairs. What a concept, considering U.S. politicians admit to being experts at coups, but then deny them while they're actually happening.
I disagree with that. As somebody who has helped plan coup d'etat, not here, but, other places, it takes a lot of work. This is clearly not a coup. We recognize Juan Guaido as the legitimate interim president of Venezuela.
And in reality, the U.S. alienates itself. Instead of vilifying China, Washington's exclusion of Nicaragua, Cuba, and Venezuela from the Summit of the Americas back in June sparked harsh criticism and further exposed its weakness.
There cannot be a Summit of the Americas if all the countries of the Americas do not participate, or there can be, but we consider that this is a continuation of the old approach.
I do not like the exclusion of Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. Exclusion only fosters isolation and does not work, as we have historically learned.
Maybe that's why Latam leaders are pushing for a new currency to lessen dependency on the dollar. Others are wanting to nationalize their resources, like the Western coveted lithium.
We industrialize our lithium, but they want to take it from us. Unfortunately, the West only wants Latin America to guarantee the supply of raw materials and doesn't want us to add value to our natural resources.
How surprising that after decades of neocolonialism, coups, and the exploitation of resources, Latin American leaders turn away from the U.S. and toward new allies offering equal standing and respect. Clearly, the U.S.'s unilateral hold on the continent is at an all-time low, and vilifying Russia and China with the specter of communism isn't quite as effective as it used to be. But make no mistake, it's also apparent Washington has its eyes on the region and won't let it go that easily.
So let me address a couple things. I got to address 2 points, and then I'll let Rashid chime in. in that clip, you see that they were talking about Russia's influence in America's so-called near abroad. This is what they said. That's the phrase that they use, and they have to stop that. Right now, let's go back to December the 1st, 2021. Now, America just said that Latin America and the Caribbean is their near abroad, right? That's where they dominate. And Russia was talking about how America was infringing upon former Soviet territories, okay? This is December 1st, 2021. NATO Secretary Jens Stoltenberg. What is his name? Jens Stoltenberg. Let me put this up to the camera real quick. Russia has no right to establish a sphere of influence, NATO chief says. It says, tensions over Ukraine escalated Wednesday, December 1st, after Russia demanded guarantees from NATO that the military alliance would not expand to Europe's east. In a joint session with their Georgian and Ukrainian counterparts, NATO foreign ministers meeting in Riga, Latvia, meant to reassure both countries of their commitment to them joining the alliance in due time. Ukraine and Georgia are important NATO partners aspiring to membership. We continue to support their sovereignty. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg told reporters after the meeting. Listen, it says, and I'm trying to scroll down, it says, he says that Russia does not have a right to have a near abroad. And I'm paraphrasing, but he says Russia does not have a right to a sphere of influence. Now, that's exactly what they were just talking about with America, saying that Russia is infringing upon America's spheres of influence and it's near abroad. Is that not right? How is it that America and NATO has the right for it, but Russia and China don't have? Do you see the racism, the exceptionalism, and the imperialism at the core of politics? Now, you hear Rubio, I think that's his name, up in Congress on the video. He talked about how China is exporting its model, gobbling up the Caribbean and Latin America. No, it's America. America wants you to be a democracy, but she wants you to be a democracy under her tutelage, the way she says it, the way she wants it. And she wants you to be by her weapons and do as she says and not as she does, right? So that projection again. It is not China that has military bases in the Caribbean. It is not China that has military bases in South and Central America. It is America that has a military base in Japan, close to China. It's America that has a military base in South Korea. As a matter of fact, they have over 24 in South Korea. It's America that is occupying 85% of the island of Okinawa. It is America that has military bases all across the realm of the South Pacific. But they say it's China. The projection, I'm telling you, the madness in these people is unheard of. Go ahead, Rashid.
It's like we said before. He considers himself king, and everybody else is a subject. The king ain't concerned with what the subjects do. You go in the feudal era with the King Victorian, they ain't concerned with what some mere peasant got to say. Chop off his head, and they say off with his head. He ain't concerned about nobody else, and that's the way he thinks around the world. He ain't concerned with what Russia got to say. Russia is my subject. I allow them to do what they in the global community. I allow them to sell oil to us. I allow them to sell wheat to us. Right? I'm the king, and everybody else is my subjects. It reminded me what you were saying about he always hollers about free markets and right the competition. What he's doing is anti-competition. Yeah. Set up this Socotra, whatever it is, that against America act. Anybody that buy anything that Russia, we can sanction you because of our act that we passed in Congress that say you can't buy anything else. Isn't that anti-competition?
That is actually extra global laws. Like that is America imposing her laws on the rest of the world. You know,
I go back to this. Socotra, I think it is. I go back to this UN. If the rest of the world had any sense, they would get out of the UN and set up their own UN and shun the West. These people are out to, they got a goon squad of killers. If you don't agree with them, then they'll send them in there on you. They do it over and over. The rest of the world should wake up to it.
Right.
Get rid of him. And take his UN and all of his laws and tell him to shove it where the sun don't shine. Because it ain't benefiting us, is it? Name me anything in that UN that benefits the other countries. Where the white man of America and Europe can ignore every last UN laws, but if you do it, then we send it in the military after you. So why be a part of that stuff? I mean, like you said, you know, they should know that they were born. You know, we were all born, but I wasn't born last night. They should wake up to the reality that this man, him and his system, is to control and make slaves out of us. As long as we go along down the line, letting him come and steal all of our natural resources, kill off our children and take their organs, rape and rob our women, then we're part of the West. The second we say, hey, man, I want to control my own laws and to control my own country, then I'll become an enemy. So the thing of it is to get rid of him. Tell him to take his boats. That's what China them should do. Tell him take his boats and all of his laws and stuff and go back over there to across the waters. We don't need you around here. But again, that's the way we think.
And here it is. It says the name of the thing is the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. That's what it is. But listen, everyone, as we do these shows, we know we'll be suspended. We have to watch our tongue a little bit on YouTube now because they sent notice in it. One more thing that they're going to delete, not suspend, but delete the channels, both channels, the Red Pill Diaries and the Red Pill Journals. So if they do, we have a backup channel called The Truth Serum. You can go there and subscribe. So if we're no longer on these platforms, you'll be able to catch us. We'll start streaming over there. But we have a show tomorrow. We're going to be doing a show tomorrow. And if you want to find out when more shows will be scheduled, you can go to the locals. We'll start putting up the thing on locals and on Twitter and on the other platforms, just to let you know, because we get blocked a lot on here. Now, Rashid, in closing, what have you to say about what we talked about, the latest news of the week and the arrogance and imperialism of the West? What have you to say?
Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Something, it used to be a while before this stuff would break. Now it's happening. We're getting changes every day, and it's leading up to the collapse of the empire.
Yeah. So in closing, we'd like to thank each and every one of you who have joined us and who will join us. We don't know but one way to tell it, and it's raw, butt naked truth. I know some people can't stomach it because
that's right. We make a lot of enemies with this truth.
Yeah, you can't stomach it because it's so raw. But we have to.
That's
be
right.
raw
If you can't stand the heat, stay out the kitchen.
And sometimes we have to just be that person that gives you something that you don't want to hear, but it is beneficial to you. Okay. So, and on that note, we love you, but God loves you best. Always stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous until we next speak again. And besides, hey, mama, your baby boy loves you always. Everybody, peace.
I'm watching it on